All right, so today we're jumping into the story of a really fascinating spiritual figure from early 20th century India, Shree Shree Thakur Anukulchandra. And our guide for this is a great book called Ocean in a Teacup, written by Hauserman, an American who actually spent most of his life as one of Thakur's followers.
You know, the author kicks things off with this incredible metaphor, and it's just a perfect way to frame what we're doing here. We're about to dive into a life that's as vast as an ocean, but we're just going to be able to sample a cupful, focusing on the core ideas that really built a movement.
So to really get a feel for how different Thakur's approach was, we've got to start with a story from the book. And it's a story that pretty much breaks every rule you'd expect from a spiritual guide.
So, picture this, a man who's at the absolute peak of his career, a celebrated singer and poet named Hem Mukherjee. Everybody loves him. But behind the scenes, his life is a total wreck. He's completely lost to alcoholism, and he shows up at Thakur's community looking for help, but let's just say he's not in the best state of mind.
And we're not just talking a little tipsy. The book says he was loud, he was arrogant, just making a huge scene. You can imagine the devotees there were completely shocked. They couldn't figure out why their leader, Thakur, would even give this guy the time of day. The whole atmosphere was just tense.
And this is where the story gets really wild. While everyone else is looking on in horror, Thakur just smiles, and with this incredible warmth, he walks over and gives the poet a gift. What is it? A brand new, full bottle of whiskey. No lecture, no judgment, nothing.
And get this, it wasn't just a one-off gesture. This became their thing, a daily ritual. Every single afternoon, Hem Mukherjee would come, and Thakur himself would personally hand him his bottle of whiskey. This went on for weeks, even after they moved back to their main ashram. So this goes on and on, right? Then one morning, something shifts. The poet shows up like usual, but he sees that Thakur looks really sick, really pale. And the book describes how, for the very first time, Hem's worried for another person, for this man who had shown him nothing but acceptance. It was stronger than his own addiction. He actually forgot to ask for his drink.
And that was it. That was the moment. He left with the bottle, walked straight to a nearby river, and just tossed it in. He never touched a drop again. It was this radical act of compassion, not judgment, that finally broke through. So what in the world is the philosophy behind a move like that?
Well, to answer that, we actually have to go way back to when he was just a kid in a classroom, because believe it or not, that's where this whole idea started. The story goes that his teacher, trying to make him look foolish in front of the class, asks him the simplest question imaginable. Hey, what's 1 + 1? And the young Anukulchandra gives this really strange answer. He wasn't trying to be difficult. He was trying to explain this huge idea that had just dawned on him.
And that right there, that's the whole key. He realized that when you add things, you're assuming they're identical. But think about it. No two people, no two leaves on a tree are ever really the same. They're unique, so you can't just add them up. To really help someone, you can't just apply some generic formula. You have to see them as a unique one and meet them exactly where they are, just like he did with the poet.
But see, this wasn't just some abstract idea for him. He took this and built an entire practical philosophy around it, something you could actually live day in and day out. For him, spirituality had to be about action.
He basically boiled it down to 3 core daily practices for his followers. First was jajan, this idea that real meaningful work is a form of love, and that prayer without action is basically empty. Then came jajan, which was daily meditation. And finally, istolbriti, a small voluntary offering made out of love every day, which he believed created this incredible inner strength.
And this is what really set his philosophy apart. A lot of spiritual paths are about separating from the world, right? Detaching. He taught the exact opposite. He believed that the spiritual and the material were totally intertwined. For him, building a school or working in a lab was just as holy, just as spiritual as sitting down to pray.
Okay, so you have this amazing philosophy, but how do you turn that into a real, living, breathing community? Well, that brings us to the story of Satsang, the community he founded, which would face this unbelievable test of survival.
So the community, Satsang, it started small in his hometown way back in 1919, and for almost 30 years, it grew and thrived. It was proof that his ideas worked. But then, in 1946, disaster strikes. Violent riots leading up to the partition of India forced them to flee, a mass exodus. And yet, Just a year later, against all odds, they started over from zero, rebuilding the entire community in a new place called Diogar.
And just so you get a sense of what they lost, we're not talking about a small commune here. At its peak in their original home, the book says there were 8,000 permanent residents. 8,000, with schools, factories, and laboratories that they had built with their own hands.
And this is the really incredible part. They lost everything physical, their homes, their land, their workshops. But the community itself, those bonds they had built through years of working together and living this philosophy, that was the real foundation. And that's something they could carry with them to start all over again.
Okay, let's bring this all full circle now, back to that ocean in a teacup idea we started with, because it should make a lot more sense now.
I mean, think about it. We've seen how this one powerful idea, this radical individuality, could change one man's life through an act of radical compassion, and then go on to build a community so strong it could literally survive being wiped off the map and starting over. This really has been just a small taste of a much, much bigger story.
And that really leaves us with a big question to think about, right? The story of satsang seems to suggest that a community's true foundation isn't brick and mortar or money. It's a shared philosophy, a shared respect for each other's uniqueness. It makes you wonder, what really makes a community strong enough to last?
So, we'll leave you with a piece of a poem that Thakur gave to the author, Ray Hauserman, before he left. It feels like the perfect way to end, a final thought on a life dedicated to service, and to this idea of always growing, always becoming more. Thanks for joining us.